poverty mindset, how it creeps in and holds you back, and also how to break free from it. Smart Lawyers Position and Transition. I am Victoria Collier, and this is the Smart Lawyers Position and Transition podcast. I'm with our guest, Jennifer Goddard, the CEO, Vice President, and Co-Founder of IMS. And that should be familiar because she has been a guest before, and I cannot wait for you to hear the discussion we have for you today. We will be discussing navigating mindset and strategy for law firm growth. Smart Lawyers Position and Transition transforms the lives of attorneys who want better, more valuable law firms that in some time want to sell and find a life after law. The information provided is not intended to be legal, financial, or any other kind of advice, just great information and certainly entertainment whenever Jennifer's on. So today we're talking about navigating mindset, strategy for law firm growth, and I want to welcome Jennifer. The reason that we're even having this conversation is because Jennifer and I spent our time together in February in Arizona because Jennifer had organized for her family to run in the Arizona Mesa Marathon, half marathon, and I wanted to run a 10K, and Jennifer knew that because, well, we've known each other quite a while, and Jennifer's a runner too. And so she invited me to go out there, and we stayed at an Airbnb condo, and you just can't have the same kind of professional or personal relationships as you can when you sleep together. Let's just put it that way. When you sleep together. In separate rooms. Now, come on. But this provided the perfect environment to discuss business, life, successes, failures, really getting vulnerable with each other. And part of that was talking about our own mindsets and the mindsets that we see that our clients have had, the clients that we coach and that we work with. And so we're going to talk about that. But for those of you who don't know who Jennifer Goddard is, I want to share with you that she is the CEO, Vice President, and Co-Founder of IMS. She guided the agency from its startup as a consulting firm in 1995 to a multi-million-dollar national agency. Jennifer specializes in helping estate planning and elder law firms grow great law firms with authentic marketing and business leadership. And I know this for a fact because one of my businesses hired Jennifer's business back in 2011 when we were just a startup and really helped us explode. Her marketing credentials include serving as CMO for a regional bank and trust company and 10 years as a marketing director with the largest healthcare delivery system in the Midwest. She earned her writing and business chops early in life as a newspaper reporter and eventually managing editor of a daily newspaper. Jennifer holds a bachelor's degree in journalism with a specialty in newspaper publishing from the University of Missouri-Columbia and earned her master's in business management, leadership, and strategy from Michigan State University. And why I feel it's so important to actually go through all these credentials is that there are so many companies that basically, I've been practicing for 2 years. Now I can coach you on this and that and the other. All you have to do is throw money at Google. And that is not who IMS is. That's not who Jennifer Goddard is. And that's not who you're going to be talking to today. And I want you to know that we have an expert here in the house that I have known for 13 years. And so Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Victoria. It's always a pleasure whenever we get to talk about business and our passion for helping attorneys really live their best lives and do that through their careers. That's just, I just love being here.
Well, I would not have been in Arizona and I would not have run that 10K if it weren't for you. And if it weren't for that, we would not be here today having this conversation. So, but we had a great conversation there. And what I'd love to, ask you is bring that conversation to this room. And can you explain what a poverty mindset looks like in the context of a law firm as you have seen it, working with lawyers who actually want, they say, to expand their practice, at least increase their revenue or their client base. And yet you're saying that you're seeing a poverty mindset.
Yeah, you would think that lawyers wouldn't have this, that it just seems odd that lawyers would have a scarcity or a poverty mindset. But we see it all the time, and it sometimes is the thing that holds them back. And here's how it manifests. And Victoria, I know you've seen this as well. It's this constant focus on saving money and finding the absolute cheapest solution instead of looking at what's the best solution, always looking, how can I do this a little bit cheaper? You'll see this kind of, I would say, uncommon willingness to DIY things, seeing their own time as free so that if I do it myself, I'm somehow saving money without really even thinking about the opportunity cost and how well can they do it versus an expert. So it's that focus always on, let me do it a little cheaper. And it comes out too in not being willing to hire the best people to be on their staff, but looking for the cheapest person or the cheapest way to get to get someone to help them. And that results in they end up having to do things themselves. They say things like, nobody can help me. Nobody but me can do this job. Well, it's because of nobody that they hire can do that job. And then they also have a lot of staff turnover because they're hiring people who really aren't qualified. They're just trying to, put a body in there.
Well, and they're not taking the time to train them because they're too busy doing all the other hats that they shouldn't be doing. But let's give some real examples here. Let's spar with some examples. How's that?
Okay, great.
So I'll give the first example, then you give another example, and then we'll just keep giving examples till we run out of examples. But the first one would be, I do my own bookkeeping because it's easy to do on QuickBooks. Instead of paying someone $25 an hour who knows how to do this in 2 hours, I'm going to spend all Sunday putting my billable hours in and billing my clients and do it and exchange that time instead of spending it with my family. Or let's assume I'm still on billable hours, aghast, but let's just say my billable hour is $150 because I don't know how to value myself, is $150 an hour. I'm going to spend 4 hours on Sunday instead of paying someone else $25 to do it quicker, faster, and better.
Well, I'll one-up you on that, Victoria. Not only am I going to do my own bookkeeping, but I'm going to go on a Facebook group and I'm going to say how expensive QuickBooks is. What could you do that would be cheaper than QuickBooks? And then I'm going to listen to the people who say, well, I could do it with a spreadsheet. And so they're going to try to learn how to do all their bookkeeping with a spreadsheet. And so it's not just Sunday afternoon, it's weeks and weeks and weeks of figuring out how they can not pay QuickBooks and do their accounting on a spreadsheet.
Well, and then I'm going to say that same lawyer has decided not to get a drafting software for their estate plan. Instead, they're going to use some template out of a 1957 Wachovia Bank book, and they're just going to replace the name at the top and the name at the bottom and call it good because they don't like these systems and processes because they're $500 a month and I only charge, $250 for an entire will plan.
That's a great segue to another way that this poverty mindset shows up. It's not only in not wanting to spend money, but in undercharging. Mm-hmm. And there was a recent Martindale survey that showed that almost 70% of estate planning attorneys charged less than $2,000 for an estate plan. And almost half, 40%, charged around less than $1,000 for an estate plan. Mm-hmm. And we talk to attorneys all the time who are charging those kinds of fees. And they come to us and they say, well, I want to earn, right? I want my personal earnings to be $250,000, $350,000. And you look at their fee structure and there's no way that they could physically get there. Mm-hmm. The solo practitioner can only meet with so many people. You can only close so many people. You can only serve so many cases. And so just to make the math easy, if you're charging $1,000 for an estate planning case and you do 10 of those a month, that's $10,000 a month. That's total gross revenue in the year. If every month is the same, of $120,000. Yeah. And you really can't physically double or triple that at that fee structure to get to your revenue goals. And so sometimes just hitting a revenue goal is all about the mindset and not undercharging and valuing your time.
Well, and then that leads to other issues, such as if I can't make more than that, then I can't afford to hire someone else, right? Which then perpetuates that entire cycle again and again and again. And there was actually an attorney that I'm really good friends with in another state that was referring an estate planning client to me for a married couple, simple will plan for both of them. I get it. They had no kids. And she said, I told her, I charged $550 for a consult. She's like, oh my God, I only charge literally it was like $350 for the whole plan. I'm like, I can't even sit down with them to talk with them for that. But it is exactly what you're talking about is that, first of all, the average lawyer, small practice, solo practitioner, takes home between $90,000 to $120,000 a year. That's pocket money, like in your pocket, which means they're making no more than about 200 maybe, because they don't have a ton of expenses. But it's hard to expand on that. So, while it does seem odd that business owners, I consider them business owners who happen to be lawyers, could have that poverty mindset, and yet it seems to just infiltrate our entire industry. Why do you think that is, Jennifer?
Well, I think it starts with the fact that you, as a business owner, as a law firm business owner, you don't have any education in running a business. Law school didn't teach you how to run a business. And so what I see is a lot of times attorneys get thrust into this job of being a business owner, and they realize that they don't have any skill set for doing this. It's not as easy as they thought it would be. And then they start to pull back because they're scared, right? And I don't blame them. You're scared because you're like, I'm doing something, I have no idea what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And so to protect ourselves and protect our egos, mm-hmm. we can pull into a scarcity mindset where it's, law school didn't teach me how to do this. My market won't support it. I can't charge these fees because I'm in estate planning. And so you start to think, it's normal, it's okay for me to not be successful, for me to not be wealthy, not because of anything about me, mm-hmm. but it's the scarcity that's in the market. It's a self-defense as well as a fear.
And not only, and it's funny because I'm going to put the other side of scarcity on there, it's an abundance of scarcity because you go to bar events and everybody's complaining about the same things. And now I'm around all my colleagues and we all are talking about the same thing. And so I'm not alone. And so now I am actually, with everyone else thinking, this is the way it is. This is always the way it's going to be. And there is no other way than this. So you feel like, you can never get out of it. Everybody's like this. And yet there are some super uber successful lawyers and business owners out there. And there's a fair number of them too. And so do you think those super successful ones broke out of this scarcity mindset? Or do you think that they were just never in it to begin with? Or do you think it's kind of a combination?
Well, here's what I think. There are people who just never did have a scarcity mindset. They just did. It's not in their DNA. They are go-getters, they're confident, they make decisions, they make good decisions, and they make them quickly. And my advice is hang out with those people, right? We all know people who are running multiple seven-figure law firms. And in my business, multiple seven-figure digital marketing agencies. I want to be with them. And when I'm seeking advice, I'm not talking to the people who are struggling with $100,000 of revenue. I'm looking around and saying, who do I know who doesn't have that poverty mindset? And maybe some of that can rub off on me. But I also think, Victoria, that most of us have a tendency for a scarcity mindset. Most of us have had experiences in life that kind of taught us not to take a risk, to hold back and to be careful. And that's not entirely bad, obviously. It's one thing that keeps us safe. But I think one of the keys is to kind of check yourself. And when you hear yourself saying, I can't afford that, let a little bell go off in your mind. Whoa, that's a red flag. Well, how am I thinking about this? Can I change the way I'm thinking about this? Should I invest in this? And instead of being worried about what if it goes wrong, focus on how good could it be, right? If this goes well instead. So we can acknowledge that we all have a tendency towards this and kind of check ourselves and our thinking as we go through our lives. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind when you say that, as far as, I can't afford this, is what comes to me is switching that statement to a question of, how can I afford this? Not like, how can I afford this, but how can I afford this? Who do I need to be? What do I need to do to be able to afford this, right?
Exactly. And resourcefulness. There are lots of ways to afford things, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. But you and I are two people who probably started off fairly early with not having that poverty mindset. Now, I will tell you that, and this is something that I don't think I've shared publicly anywhere, which is hard to imagine because I'm such an open book. But when I moved out when I was 17 and I was living on my own, I literally would drive by this one particular apartment complex in Houston that was, all I can say is, I don't think it was the good side of town. And and I don't even know that the apartment complex had electricity in it or running water. And I thought to myself at that time, I could live there if I needed to. If I need to live there, I can do that on my way to wherever it is I'm going next, because I'll do whatever it takes. And I don't know if that's a poverty mindset or a resilient mindset, but I can tell you I was willing to live in poverty in order to get where I needed to go. But, there's times when I catch myself, even today, fast forward to having owned several businesses, all that kind of stuff, to where, I will hear my kids say, well, Mommy, can we afford that? And I know that they only say that because of things I must have said in the past. Because, I'm a business owner. Money's up, money is down sometimes. Money is up, right. Money is down. And they feel it, they hear it, and I'm not secret with them about it. But now when they're saying, but Mommy, can we afford that? I say to them, let's not think about the money. Let's think about, is this a good decision? Not, do we want it? Do we not want it? Because of course I want it, and I'll rationalize it all day long because I am that personality. But now, because I have little ones following me, I have to say, is this a good decision, regardless of whether I want it or not, and regardless of price? Is it a good decision for the end result? And that's, I think, how we get there from a business financial standpoint, so we can implement these strategies without sabotaging ourselves.
Well, I think another really good strategy is to not let your fear and your gut drive your decisions, but to stay grounded in reality and look at your numbers. Mm-hmm. And I just have a little example that kind of came to my mind this past week. And by the way, my internal voice is schizophrenic. So my internal voice says, go for it, but you might fall off the cliff, right? So I am constantly battling that internal voice. And so I just did my taxes. Just this week I did my taxes, and I was putting it off and procrastinating because I was afraid that I was going to have this big tax bill. Mm-hmm. Well, because I am also, that my internal voice is schizophrenic. Also, last year when I filed my taxes, I did pre-tax planning so that I would be in a good position this year. But nonetheless, that scarcity mindset had made me avoid actually looking at the numbers. So,
which is interesting, because you're going to have a big tax bill whether you look at the do your taxes or not, right?
Exactly. We can live in this area of time where we don't know, so it must be good. Right. My point being, I did my taxes. I owe $28.
That's huge. Yeah, that's huge.
Because I did my pre-tax planning, and it all worked out. And my point being, I see a lot of times attorneys get scared. They look at, maybe they pay their marketing bill. Maybe they pay their bill to Google, and it's like, oh, that was $5,000. And then this fear kind of gets in the knot in their stomach. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's too much money. We got to cut back. instead of going and looking at the numbers and seeing that $5,000 that they spent on Google brought them $35,000 in new business.
Right. It's when we get scared, we then basically retract into that scarcity mindset. Even when we've opened ourselves up, is what I'm hearing you say. I've been open, I've hired the right people, I've put in the right marketing, but then in a moment of being afraid based on situational, maybe it's tax time, maybe it's the end of the year, maybe it's seasonal, but then I'm like, oh my God, I need to undo everything I just did because I'm afraid, without actually digging into the numbers and seeing the reality of it.
Right. And that then also becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think I told you about a common story that I see a lot. If you don't work on this mindset, it can sabotage any strategy, even the best strategy. And one that I see repeat over and over and over is we run Facebook ads for an attorney. And that ad campaign is doing great. They're spending $30 a day. It's bringing them leads. It's giving them a good return. But we're headed into the holiday season or the election season, and we know there's going to be a lot of competition on Facebook. So we advise the client, my suggestion would be that we up the budget during this season to keep your lead flow up and your revenue up. So go from $30 a day to $50 a day. Mm-hmm. And the scarcity mindset kicks in, and they say, no, I can't do that. I can't afford to do that. Mm-hmm. Then that's sabotages. So the costs go up, their lead flow goes down. And not only during this season does their lead flow go down, but because their campaign is underperforming, Facebook continues to penalize them by not showing their ads. And so even when we come out of the election season or the holiday season, they still have an underperforming ad campaign. Now they hate Facebook, they hate us, they hate advertising, and they shut everything down.
Right.
And it all comes from that fear, that scarcity mindset, despite having a great strategy.
Right. And another example just like that is when we go into recessions. People are like, oh, I need to tighten my belt and I need to, really just hold on to everything I have, which then makes the recession harder because there's no money out in the economy, which then makes people not be able to come and hire our services, right? I mean, you can just see these cycles all over the place, and our part in them, if you're willing to look, and being willing to look is part of that mindset. So Jennifer, how can people get out of this mindset, especially if they don't even know they're in it, right? Because it's so easy to be, again, going with the flow of the people who feel what you feel, and then you've got to somehow break out and say, hey, I want to be that salmon, swimming upstream mm-hmm. instead of downstream with everybody else. Do you have any tips on that? And then what I'd love to do after the tips is go into some case studies and some success stories. Stories.
So I really have four strategies that I want to focus on to get out of that mindset. And the first one is to check yourself and listen for the red flags. The times when you say, I can't afford it. The times when you procrastinate on making a decision that you know you need to make. So many people come to us and say, I know I need better marketing. I really want to do this. And then it's 6 months before they ever can make a decision. Check yourself. That's a good sign that you might be in that scarcity mindset. My second one is ground yourself in the numbers. Face reality and don't let your fears, exaggerate any problems that might be there. The third one is find those people like we talked about. Some of these people are just knocking it out of the park and they're confident and they don't have that scarcity mindset. Run with those folks. Join their groups. Follow them on social media. Take them out to lunch. Just this morning.
And pay for it.
Just this morning, Victoria, before we got on this podcast, I was talking to a marketing director for an $8 million a year digital marketing agency. And I was talking to them because I want to be $8 million a year. Mm-hmm. And they're super generous, right, with their time. You can do that. Mm-hmm. And then the fourth one is get out of those groups where everybody is negative. There are so many Facebook groups and listservs and, get-togethers where everybody is just, woe is me, and DIY and reverse engineering the technology. Stop it. None of my best clients are in any of those groups. They don't have time. If they're not serving clients, if they're not marketing their business, they're doing exactly what I just said. They are networking and masterminding and learning more to grow their business. They are not hanging out in those Facebook groups.
Well, I have a different take on that a little bit, in that some of my best clients are in the Facebook groups, but that's because, first and foremost, they are leaders in their industry. They do get referrals from those Facebook groups, and they have hired everyone in the different positions that they themselves don't want to have. So they've replaced themselves so they have the time to strategically be in those groups to make a difference and try to change the mindset of others that maybe need it.
Sure, absolutely. That's a great, I always say a group that's behind you, you can help them. A group of your peers, you can contribute, but a group of people who are ahead of you, you can learn and they can pull you up. So you really kind of want all of those in your lives, but don't hang out with the woe is meers. Just don't buy into that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. So let's give some case studies. Let's talk about some success stories, because that's where it's at, right? That's where we all want to be. So do you have any that you can share with us of lawyers who maybe were in that poverty mindset? They came to you. They knew on some level they wanted to have a more profitable firm. They wanted to work less perhaps, but yet they kept coming with all the excuses.
Yeah, I've got a couple that are really some of my favorite stories. One is a client of ours who, a very interesting story. He took over his father's law firm, and the father had a successful law firm, but it was a solo. It was in a small town, and it was very small in California, and they focused on estate. Well, actually, his father did everything. It was general practice. He took over that law firm, and he saw an opportunity to do probate in California, which is, as you know, is just a huge, complex issue in California. Mm-hmm. But because he really invested in systems and people. Okay, so he knew he had to have great people who could really listen, and he had to have great systems so they could be very efficient in this very complex state where probate's really tough. And he has got now multiple satellite offices throughout the state of California and has expanded into Texas. And it's because of his focus on those great staff, those great systems, and digital marketing, seeing that he could expand his market beyond where he could personally walk, right? Where he could personally go knock on doors. And so I think that's a great story. I love that story. And he honors, his father and that legacy that they have in their family, but he's just, skyrocketed it.
Well, and I can share with you, I'm currently going through a probate in Texas, and it is not easy there either. And for him to be able to do that from California and own a business there, that is definitely a shift in mindset.
And I also want to throw out a number that maybe can open some people's minds. I have another attorney who set a goal when he started with us of doing $100,000 a month in revenue. Mm-hmm. Now, first, let that number sink in, that most attorneys are doing that in a year, and his goal was for a month. Mm-hmm. But in March, the month that we just finished, he did over $290,000 in revenue in 1 month. I bring that up not to make anybody feel better or to do the comparison game, but I want people to realize that it's out there. It's possible. Whatever your goal is, your revenue goal is, you can achieve it. It's not pre-written that you're only going to do $100,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let's assume that somebody says, I'm ready to get out of the negative groups. I'm ready to soar with the positive people. But where are they? And there's so many different groups and options and things I could do. I mean, people could become paralyzed, which then makes them procrastinate on that, which then keeps them exactly where they are, except maybe now they're just not negative about it. So how do we get past that?
Well, I think that, there are some strategies. One is I would listen to your podcast. You're always giving these uplifting stories and advice. I would listen to Victoria's podcast. Come over and listen to my podcast. I'm doing the same thing. We're doing a lot of client spotlights, a lot of motivation. You can feel better, okay, and get some strategies in place. I also think you can join mastermind groups. You can hire a coach. You can work with a mentor. But my only caveat on that is before you hire someone to help you and advise you as a coach or a mentor, what's their track record? If they are a solo consultant or a solo coach and they've never made more than $50,000 in a year and they've never had staff and they've never run a business, they might not be the best coach for you. Just as you want to find those other attorneys who have a seven-figure or a multiple seven-figure law firm, be careful who you hire for your coach or your mentor and make sure that they can help you get where you want to go.
Well, that's a whole other mindset, Jennifer. And number one is you have to be comfortable asking that information of that person and not just asking, how are you doing? Do you have good clients? How many clients do you have? But coming down to, can I see your profit loss statements? If you're going to be my mentor, if you're going to be my coach, whatever you want to call it these days, are you willing to be open and share that information with me? And I can tell you that, when I was hiring financial advisors, and when I still do to this day, it was so uncomfortable, but I had gotten the advice that you're giving now. And so I said to the financial advisor, I want to know what you invest in, and I don't want you to tell me, I want you to show me. Show me your statements. And those that could not or would not, I will not work with. Those that could and would, I will. Because they have to, have been there, done that. Now, we all have different skills, and there's coaches who can never play basketball. But when you're talking about your business, you've got to understand that they can get you from A to B because they've been from A to B. They've at least experienced it, right? The other thing I ask them too is on that same line is, do you have coaches? I don't necessarily need to know who they are because I don't want them to think I'm just going to go over them and go to their coaches because that's not cool either. But I want to know that they have coaches. I want to know that they're constantly working on themselves and their businesses too.
Absolutely. And I want to give one more caveat. Mm-hmm. That can happen to someone who's in a scarcity mindset. Your coach advises you. They don't make your decisions. You take their advice as you would any other professional, whether it would be your doctor or your lawyer or your physical trainer. They can advise you, but you are the decision maker. Don't turn this into another situation where you're abdicating responsibility, where you can't make a decision without your coach telling you what to do, because they're supposed to empower you, not enable you. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, yes, because then you're always wondering and you're always questioning your own decisions if you always have to rely on that coach. I was a member of an organization where we had multiple coaches, within our team, because that's how it was supposed to help us. And yet I was hearing different things from each of them. And I finally went to the owner of the organization who gave me different advice. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know who I'm supposed to listen to. I am coachable. I'm a good student. I will do whatever you tell me to do. Just don't tell me 5 different things on the same issue. So much so that I left the organization and I could not have felt more faith and trust in my own decisions at that point after I made the one decision to leave that organization, because I just didn't know how to trust myself anymore until I made that decision. But making big decisions isn't easy. We have to start with practicing on little decisions. If we have gotten ourselves so far in that where we're just, abdicating, as you said, our decisions to a coach or a mentor, and which we never should do.
Right, exactly.
So making tiny little decisions. So what would you say, Jennifer, would be, we've talked about a ton today. What would you say are the big keys that you would want our listeners to take away today on the poverty mindset, how to recognize it, how to change it, and how to get out of it so that we don't let ourselves be held captive by that, so that we can have the lives and the law firms that we want?
I think first and foremost, it's kind of like admitting it, right? You can stand up and say, I'm Jennifer Goddard, and sometimes I have a scarcity mindset, right?
Yeah.
It's true. And I'm not ashamed of that. I recognize it. Oh, gosh, can I tell one quick story that is just so hilarious? I tell you that this my internal voice is schizophrenic, right?
Yep.
So when I got engaged to my husband, David, he wanted to buy me the engagement ring of my dreams because I'd never had one. And so we went and we looked at engagement rings and we picked one out. And in my opinion, it was too much money for him to be spending. And during that same time frame, I got this big mailer from another jewelry store that if you bought your ring there, you would get all these coupons for all kinds of other things. And so I told David, I said, we got to go over to this other jeweler and look at these other rings because they've got all these coupons. And David said, time out. I'm buying you the ring that you always wanted. Is this ring the ring that you've always wanted? And I said, yes, it is. And so his non-scarcity mindset, right, his mindset of abundance overpowered mine. Mm-hmm. And I just bring that up because we have to recognize it, maybe laugh at it, but don't deny it. Mm-hmm. Be aware of some of the symptoms, high staff turnover. Everybody on your staff is incompetent, right? because you hired very poorly. You're DIYing. You're trying to figure out how to do your books on spreadsheets. You're afraid to make a decision. Don't be ashamed of that, but don't deny it. Own it. And saying, you know what, I need to be working on that. That's a part of me that's holding me back. It's not empowering me to achieve my goals.
Great. I love that. And you mentioned own it. I would suggest our listeners, if they haven't read this book, I would recommend they read Extreme Ownership. It's written by some military people. And so there's a lot of military overtones in it. I'm not even going to say undertones, they're overtones. But it's such an important book on really recognizing, do I take ownership or do I not?
Right.
And that's taking ownership of recognizing our scarcity mentality as well. So I think this is such a great topic. I think you and I could talk about it forever and ever. And I would love to, but we're at the end of today. And so how can people get in touch with you, Jennifer, and how can they find your podcast? Because it is also instrumentally beneficial, because one of the areas people always cut back is marketing, and that is not the area they should cut back if they're planning to expand.
Well, they can find my podcast at www.marketinglawcast.com. And one of the things that we do at Integrity Marketing is we do a free discovery call. So if you want to reach out to us and just see whether we might be a good fit to help you, that call is free. And you can get to that and schedule that on our website, which is www.imsrocks.com. And just go to book a call and talk with my team, and just, we are certainly no pressure, no obligation, but we can talk with you and see what your goals are and whether we might be a good fit to help you get there.
Well, and I have, you and I have mutual clients that work with me, work with you, and my clients only just rave about the services you guys provide. And and it's never one of those P&L items that we ever scratch off. So, so I thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure. And let me know when the next run is so we can talk more business and see what our next podcast is going to be together.
Sounds great. Thank you, Victoria.
You're welcome. Well, if you want more resources to help your law firm, then I invite you to become a member of our private Facebook group called The Art of Buying and Selling Law Firms, and continue to listen to this podcast, Smart Lawyers Position and Transition. You can also find out more information at our website, quidproquolaw.com. I'm Victoria Collier. You have been listening to Smart Lawyers Position and Transition, which is a weekly show bringing timely and valuable information to lawyers seeking to sell or buy a law firm between 5 years and today. This show is available 24/7 online anywhere you listen to podcasts, as well as on our website.